Well, Gaza's health ministry has confirmed that the death toll in the enclave has now reached over 2,300 and just under 10,000 people have been injured. The United Nations puts the number of internally displaced persons at over 1 million, with many unable to leave Gaza due to a blockade. We're joined now by the Institute for Security Studies Willem Els. Willem, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. From a conflict perspective, when you analyze what is happening right now, and this is really the beefing up of the Israeli Defense Force, the warnings that have been sent into Gaza for close on 1 million people, or in fact slightly over, to relocate part of that particular strip to avoid being caught up in the crossfire. What do you think is about to happen next? Can we anticipate what may happen next?
Good evening, Kathy, and thank you for the opportunity. And I think that's a very good question. But I think we should start off with a definition of the United Nations, of which all of us are a signatory to that. You know, the global counterterrorism strategy of the United Nations that has been endorsed by all 195 member states. It just a short sort of a summary of that. It says that terrorism, irrespective of the causes of grievances, cannot be justified. No cause, no matter how just, can excuse terrorism. This includes a legitimate struggle of people for self-determination. Even this fundamental right defined in the Charter of the United Nations does not excuse the deliberate killing or maiming of civilians or non-combatants. And that is the definition that we are being guided by as an international community. So what we saw, what happened last Saturday, actually invoked the response that is currently going on. And as you just mentioned, you know, more than 2,000 people just in Gaza that have been killed. That is horrendous. And that is actually the result of a very small group. We must just remember, Gaza, the city of Gaza is governed by a group called Hamas that took over actually in 2016 when they pushed out the Fatah movement, who they were co-governing it with. And ever since we saw three wars, of which this one might be the biggest one. And unfortunately, with each one of them, we see that a lot of the civilian people are being caught up in these fighting, because Gaza City is one of the most densely populated areas in the world. So that is a very problematic area where we are actually having to see this whole war play itself out, and that is really it's tremendous. It is horrendous.
Willem, a couple of things that I want us to pick up on rather. Definitions, at least, especially when we're looking at conflict situations and you know the role of international law become very important. We're seeing Israel, the United States, and many of their allies describing what happened last Saturday as an act of terror. That, of course, has been contested. We don't have universal agreement that it was and can necessarily be categorized as a terrorism attack. That already muddies the water in terms of then responses and appropriateness of responses.
Indeed, you know, when it comes to terrorism, and we're speaking about the United Nations definition of that, you know, unfortunately so, when it comes to terrorism, it's a tremendous emotional topic that we are discussing. You know, there's a saying that says one man's freedom fighter is another man's sort of terrorist. So that is what we are playing out with today. We see that within the international community, United Nations, it's extremely divided on this, those who support what has happened, and also those who support what Israel is doing. But what we see at the moment is that the overwhelming international support seems to be on the side of Israel, and that will remain there until Israel actually overplays its hand. So it is very important now for Israel to temper itself and not to react with emotion, but to react with a strategy that is well thought through, that is built on principles and in international law. We see that contrary to what is happening in Syria, for instance, where there is a war ongoing, there is no pre-warning for any civilians that there is going to be an attack. We see that Israel goes out of its way in order, with leaflets that are being distributed and phone calls and WhatsApp messages, where they try to evacuate an area before they attack the area. The problem is that in this whole situation, Hamas is hiding in between the civilians. They're using them as shields, human shields, and they've got an extensive, more than 1,500 tunnels underneath the place. And that's where they're hiding, while these people that are being caught up in the middle are actually above ground, and those are the casualties. So the casualties are not so much the Hamas fighters. The casualties are the innocent civilians of Gaza.
And, William, that provides just another dynamic around this conflict. Some of, the visuals that we're seeing of these civilians that are caught in the crossfire is, number one, them distancing themselves from the actions of Hamas, saying that, we are not Hamas, we are not responsible for the violence, yet we are the ones that are caught up in the thrust of it. The other element, of course, is that among those that have been fleeing and have heeded the warning to go south, some of them have also been caught up in crossfires along that journey. And so there's very much a feeling that there could well not be any place to go within the Gaza Strip currently that is safe.
Yeah, actually, you touched on 2 points that I think that is worthwhile that we just explore it a bit. What we see is that, of course, these people do not associate themselves with Hamas, but they are bearing the brunt of what is happening. We also see that in some cases where, the strategy that Israel is using, they call it a knock on the roof strategy, where they warn the civilians prior to any attack in order for them to evacuate. Because at the end of the day, in terms of international law, contrary to what's happening in Syria, where there's no pre-warning, there is a warning. But what we also picked up is that then Hamas sent these people back into where they are, and they obstruct them from leaving. So that on the one hand is playing out. On the other hand, we have a serious problem where these people have to go to. Where do they go to? Unfortunately, it seems that none of the neighboring countries have offered to take in some of those people to assist them to evacuate to their countries, and that is really something that is not good. What also happens now is you have an attack of an offensive in the north, so more than 1 million people had to move down south. And there will be extensive fighting in the north, where Israel will try to clean out all these tunnels where these people are operating from. And then we anticipate that it will shift to the south, and then all these people that have now just been forced to move south, they will then be forced to move north along with the people in the south. So they are actually caught almost in a cage with nowhere to go. What would have been the ideal situation is if some of the neighboring countries like Egypt and like Jordan could have opened the borders for them, and in a controlled manner maybe take in some of these people to make way, because this war is going to play out. And the reason why we say this war is going to play out for some time is, like I mentioned, it's not the first one. Remember, it started in 2006, and there were 3 more wars, and now this one. And every time it ends with a truce, it ends with some sort of peace. But we see that what happens, it just repeats itself, and every time it just escalates to what we saw on Saturday, that in many people's view is been described as the 9/11 of Israel, or the Rubicon that has been crossed. And that makes it very difficult for the international community also, because on the one hand, we cannot condone what Hamas has done, but on the other hand, we also cannot condone the suffering of innocent people that are being caught up in the middle, and that is where we have to step in.
All right. Willem Els, we'll leave it there for tonight. Thank you so much for your time. He's with the Institute for Security Studies.